Good afternoon. Testing audio. Audio's loud and clear online. Very good.
Testing Zoom audio.
Hello, Miss Murillo. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hello?
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, yay. Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Mr. Carmona, does it sound good? Quality sound? Yes? Okay. Okay. So I guess I think we're all present now, so we'll go ahead and begin. Just before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to remind the public that's present in person that if you would like to address the board, to please fill out one of the yellow forms that is in the round table out there, and please submit it to our administrative assistant, Ms. Delgado. Thank you. With that being said, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us via YouTube stream, those who join us. So I now call this regular school board meeting for Gadsden Independent School District to order. Today is Thursday, July 18th, and the time is actually 4:59, starting a minute early. Ms. Delgado, can you please take roll call?
Mr. Castillo,
Present.
Ms. Flores,
Present.
Mr. Lira,
Present.
Ms. Murillo,
Present.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Present.
Madam President, we have established quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Delgado. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice President Rodriguez, can you please read our mission statement?
The Gadsden Independent School District will provide diverse educational opportunities that empower students to be successful in an ever-changing world. El Distrito Escolar Independiente de Gadsden brindará diversas oportunidades educativas que capacitarán a los estudiantes para tener éxito en un mundo cambiante.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item 3 on the agenda, Superintendent Dempsey, District Updates and Recognitions. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, thank you for joining us this evening. Before we do this item, yesterday and today we spent in what we call our annual Principals Academy. And then today you're going to get to put a name to a face. We have some new faces and similar faces with schools. But I don't know, I'm just going to say over the last 2 days, I am more excited than probably ever. This group is, I can't say enough about how eager they are to learn, how to implement those pieces. We've tried to help front load the work that they do. And then we also wanted to emphasize that if they need help, that's what our team's for. That's what the leadership team is for, is to make sure we come in to support them. So I believe with that, Mr. Hernandez, you're going to help me so I don't forget anybody, and we're going to try to recognize. What we'll try to do is identify pre-K, elementary, secondary, and then all the department individuals as well, so that you guys all see that administrative core. Mr. Hernandez?
Okay, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, welcome back. I feel like we haven't left, right? It's just like another board meeting. Just want to welcome you to a new year. As Mr. Dempsey stated earlier, we did hold the Principals Academy yesterday and today. A lot of management pieces and just some of the pieces in regards to instruction and HR. We do have a Leadership Academy next week, which is our 24th and 25th. You are cordially invited to that. If you are able to attend, please come join us. That has to do with our instructional framework. We do have Marzano Associates here. We've brought them here. We have some great presentations in regards to our instructional framework and leadership pieces that we have been implementing and working very hard on. Again, just reiterating what Mr. Dempsey just stated, we are very, very happy to announce that we have a bunch of new principals, and the majority have been moved up from within. They were assistant principals. We've moved some principals into, for example, I'll just give an example. Ms. Danielle Rodriguez is now a high school principal, not a middle school principal. And so we're very happy about where we're heading, and just the fact that building capacity in our staff is really showing, right? And so this is our great team. This is what we'd work for. Of course, our final goal is to improve our student outcomes. And so we do have some new faces. So I would like to start with the pre-K group. If I could please have Director Natalie Urbina come up with her team. Ms. Urbina is a great story for us. She started in the district as an assistant, right? As an assistant, as an IA. She has moved up as teacher for pre-K. She was also a coach. She has been an AP, and she is our new director. Right? She was also one of my parents at North Valley. I had her very young daughter at the time, who is now a senior. It's because I was 12 when I started being a principal. But anyway, Ms. Urbina will be presenting her team and their locations.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey. I am very proud to announce our pre-K team, and I'm also very honored to be able to serve as the new early childhood director. So for Anthony On-Track Pre-K, we have Ms. Angelique Ramos. For GAC Pre-K, we have Ms. Hilda Quintanar. For Sunland Park Pre-K, we have Ms. Viola Ramos, and for La Mesa On-Track Pre-K, we have Ms. Sandy Silvas. And my previous position is currently going to have interviews on Tuesday, so we're going to be filling the AP position for Chaparral.
So it was a hectic summer, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, because we spent all summer hiring. And so we had really good, like our committees included parents, not all could, but students. And it was very interesting to see the dynamics that we had in our committees, but very proud of the results. Next will be Mr. Araujo, who is our elementary director, and he now manages the 14 elementaries. We consolidated 2. He also manages all of our instructional coaches at the elementary level and all instructional specialists at the elementary level. So he has great management skills. That's all I know. He can keep track of everybody, right? So Jorge, I'm sorry, Mr. Araujo.
President Salazar Flores, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. It's a pleasure for me to introduce to you our elementary principals and assistant principals. I'm very proud of them, and I really admire every single one of them. I think they really have one of the hardest jobs, if not in this district, in the nation. Being a principal is very difficult, so I really admire them. From Desert View is Ms. Coyle and Ms. Frias. Que venga, que venga. Riverside is Mr. Sanchez, Ms. Flavian, and Ms. Valenzuela. Santa Teresa Elementary is Ms. Ward, and tomorrow we have interviews for the assistant principal. For La Union is Ms. Barraza and Ms. White. For Anthony Elementary, Ms. Lopez and Ms. Valdez. For Loma Linda, we have Mr. Cardona and Ms. Munoz. For Gadsden Elementary is Ms. Marquez and Ms. Cervantes. For Verino, Ms. Carnevale and Ms. Sanchez. And for Vado, we have our new principal, our returning principal, Ms. Corina Alvarez and Ms. Wolp. For North Valley is Mr. Kleska and Mr. Reyes. Chaparral Elementary, it's Ms. Gonzalez, Ms. Herrera, and Mr. Mata. For Desert Trail, Ms. Barajas and Ms. Aguilar. For Sunrise, Mr. Smith and Ms. Soto. And for Yaca Heights, Ms. Urbina and Mr. Diaz.
All right, if, Hector, will you take the pick of the elementary group? He'll set you guys up, Jorge, as director for them. So while they're setting up, I just want to say that as we have build capacity within our team, and they've applied for these positions. We're very happy. I'm very happy to announce, and I say this all the time, that I've had the opportunity of hiring some of these people. I have had the opportunity of seeing them grow. They've gone into different positions, and now they're in administration, and so we got to leave people to replace us when we're ready to retire. How exciting. We're going to need pre-K to come back up also so they can take their picture in a minute, okay? Sorry, that was my bad. Got excited. I know, I forgot. No. New Year, no. Pre-K, can we get you guys up here? Pre-K, the pre-K group. I forgot the pre-K group, sorry. It's because those little ones are little. I'm a secondary person, so. Who's missing? Where's Hilda? Sheila. I didn't put it with the element. Come on, board. Let's get you guys in the picture. Thank you. No, it's okay, 'cause we can present them here, yes. Our next group, of course, is our secondary group. Mr. Nick Wilgamith is the director for secondary. So Mr. Wilgamith, if you could please present your schools, and then we'll go ahead and take another picture with that. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, just like Mr. Araujo said, what an outstanding group of administrators, hardworking, dedicated. Many of them have been with the district a long time, and as a secondary director, having been a secondary principal in the district, just blessed to have been a secondary principal in this district, and to continue to work with these folks. So let me start. New to her role this year, principal of Alta Vista Early College High School, Aida Gensler. At Chaparral Middle School, new to her role this year, Principal Kathy Williams. Have Assistant Principal Robbie Lariva. And new to her role as Assistant Principal, Ms. Vanessa Pacheco. At Chaparral High School, new to her role, Principal Danielle Rodriguez. Assistant Principal Greg Martinez. Assistant Principal Laura Smith. And new to her role this year, Assistant Principal Michelle Ballard. At Desert Pride this year, both these folks are new to their position, Principal Sofia Payen and Assistant Principal Robert Mata. Moving on to Gadsden Middle School, we have Principal Veronica Quinones, Assistant Principal Esmeralda Sangster, and Assistant Principal Julian Mora. Gadsden High School, Principal Maria Legareta, Assistant Principals Loren Guerrero, Victoria Perry, and Michael Lugo. Go team. At at STMS, all new to their role, but some still familiar with the campus. Principal Barbara Peterson. Assistant Principal Elizabeth Leal. And Assistant Principal Angel Delgado. And at Santa Teresa High School, Principal Hema Suggs. Assistant Principal Lorraine Soriano. Assistant Principal Raul Villarana. And new to her role but unable to attend this evening, Assistant Principal Monica Nunez. Thank you.
Gallos, question, por favor. And then, Madam President, members of the board, if you'd like to be in this picture too. I didn't include you in elementary, I'm so sorry. My brain has, mira. As you can see, our secondary group may need some more support. I'm just saying, we may need to monitor them a little more. So, Madam President and members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, the next group, the next department that we will present is our Federal Programs Department, which is completely grant funded, right? This is completely grant funded, and it is led by our Associate Superintendent, Rosie Villalobos. So, Ms. Villalobos, if you could present your team.
Okay, good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. We are so happy to say that Federal Programs has amazing coordinators. We are really a team guiding ourselves with the philosophy, really embracing servant leadership, and each one of these members is amazingly serving our kids and our community. So here we have Ms. Debbie Ogin, Coordinator for All Social Services, which means she's in charge of all social workers, families in transition, migrant students, foster care students, making sure everybody has those services. Then we have Ms. Alma Forti, Coordinator for Counselors. She's our lead counselor in charge of every counselor in the district, making sure that we are providing the kids what they need. We have Ms. Margarita Barraza, our Title II Coordinator. And what I can tell you is she's in charge of not only mentorship program, all the new teachers. Besides that, she coordinates all the programs that we're doing with technology, all the things that we're doing with the folklorico programs, all the things, the little things that we're doing, all the little things that we're supporting all the departments. Margarita is helping us coordinating every single thing of this, making sure everything is happening. Then we have our coordinator, Mr. Conrad Bobadilla. He's our social emotional learning coordinator, ensuring that we are making a difference with our teachers and making sure that every adult really takes care of every single kid in the district. Then we have our new coordinator, Ms. Genevieve Melendez. She's our coordinator for everything, parental involvement in community centers, and everything that is community related. And then we have Ms. Elisa Cumplido. who is in charge, coordinating everything in Title I, helping us with everything that is attendance more than anything, the biggest problem that we face. She's in charge of that monster. Besides that, she's helping us with tutoring and a lot of different things that have to be related with Title I. And then we have Ms. Vero Lugo, who is our coordinator for professional development. And all the things that we have been having, like yesterday and today, all of us have been working together in such a smooth, beautiful way, and it's thanks to Ms. Lugo. She makes sure that everybody is really growing academically, personally, and everything. So we're very blessed to have this beautiful team. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Villalobos. Go ahead. Stand with your team so you can have your picture. So we can post that on our website. Oh, thank you, Mr. Mora. Thank you. And then last but not least is the Academic Services Department, right? So that would be the department that I supervise. And again, every single one of these people is a link to the success that we've had in the district. I'm sure you've already heard, and I don't know if Mr. Dempsey will bring that up, but we are one of the top 4 in the state for graduation rates, right? So huge deal, big deal. Everybody wants to know how we do it, and we do it. My leadership style, and I think a lot of us, is collaborative leadership, is taking into account everybody's ideas and suggestions, and then making a decision based on that. We don't always make everybody happy, but I think that when you have voice in what we're doing and what is happening, we can adjust as we go. And so I'd like to present my team, and all of this team is really my team because we all work together with the students, but my team would be Ms. Natalie Urbina, who is the director for pre-K. My team is also Mr. Jorge Araujo, who is the director for elementary. Our director for secondary, Mr. Nick Wilgamuth. My director for language equity and cultural arts, Nubia Tarazona. My director for data analysis and information system, Margie Berkhold. My coordinator for testing, Zulema de la Rosa. My coordinator for MLSS, she joined us in, I believe it was like November, December, so we haven't really had a chance. She's working on that piece now, because when you come in second semester, it's a lot of testing and things like that. And Ms. Adriana Gaona. I just want to make sure I don't miss anybody, right? And so I think that I'm missing, is Mr. Beach here? Coordinator for Fine Arts, Mr. Beach. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Beach. So one of the things with our department is when you have great people that work with you, it's very easy because they understand my brain and my craziness, right? And so I'm the kind of person that has an idea and will be like, and Ms. Lugo is also kind of part of my team because of the PD piece, and I'll be like, can you make sure all the principals attend every session? Figure it out. Good luck, right? And they do, and I think that that's just a testament to the commitment to the district, commitment to the students more than anything. And so again, I want to thank you guys for putting up with me. But you know, the things that we are doing is showing improvement, and we're seeing it in some of the data, and I'm just very happy that you guys are part of my team. I don't think I'm missing anybody, right? Because I have a lot of people. Yes, I am missing somebody. A new department. So thank you, board, for approving the reorganization of special ed, and today this particular group presented to principals, and I can just say that, you know, making decisions sometimes is difficult, but in the end, we're looking for student outcomes, and we're making sure that students are moving and that we're providing what we need to for them to be successful. So I'd like to introduce part of the leadership team now for our special ed department, and that would be our new associate superintendent for special services. Over here is Ms. Angelica Rodriguez. Ms. Rodriguez comes with about 29 years of experience. And I'm sorry, Ms. Rodriguez, I didn't tell you I was going to tell them that. She supervised she supervised the department. I'll just throw out some numbers. I know I'm a little bit wrong, but something like, 72 DIAGs, 50 SLPs, 15 psychs. So the experience is something that we were looking for in regards to reorganization. There will be growing pains, right, because it's going to be a different structure, but we appreciate that from our board. I know that that's also a hard decision sometimes to make some of these changes when we reorganize. And then our new director for compliance is Dr. Victoria Pando. Dr. Pando is one of our own as well. Welcome, Dr. Pando. Dr. Pando has worked in our district as a diagnostician, as a lead diagnostician, so happy to see you here. The other director that we currently do have on board is the director for ancillary, and that is Ms. Brianna Maya Villegas. She's not available today, but she's also part of this team. And then we're getting ready, I believe Tuesday, we're hiring for the director for instruction, right? And so that's going to be, you'll be hearing a lot from them. They'll be presenting. We're working at data. We're looking at staffing. We're looking at a lot of things. And so we just ask, like we asked the principals, if please provide us grace and please provide us a little bit of time so that we're able to identify gaps and needs that are very specific to student needs. Okay? And thank you. That's all that I have, Mr. Dempsey. I don't know. Oh, pictures, sorry, of this group, my group.
Madam President, that concludes that presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Dempsey. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda is board member reports. I'll go ahead and start with the Vice President Rodriguez.
Well, what a beautiful evening, right? To see all the people that make the magic happen, unlike the changing the pictures. Thank you for everything that you all do. I think that I'm eager to see what this new year is going to bring, and I know that we're going to continue moving forward. It's a pleasure to see everyone excited to be back pretty soon, right? I know most of you are back, but the students will be back shortly, so that'll be great. We went to the leadership conference. Yes, leadership. This past weekend, and it's also very refreshing, right, to see the things that are happening within our district, to hear when they're talking about different things and the things that we need to, changes that we need to make, and sometimes, like as someone mentioned, right, sometimes change is it's not easy, but it's necessary if we want to continue improving the student outcome. So that's something that, I really believe in and I work for. That's the reason I'm here, because I want our district to be the best and, for us to work together. And I think that I look forward to it once again and continuing. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Moving on to Secretary Murillo.
Good evening, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Okay? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I apologize for not being there in person. I am in Albuquerque for the Project Search National Conference. If you guys don't, some of you guys know, we do have a Project Search in our district, and we're one of the few. We have the CEO and the founders of Project Search here, that they're from Ohio, Ms. Susie and Aaron. and they have been giving us so much kudos. They've been talking about Gadsden this whole week, and it's amazing having people from Mississippi and Nebraska coming over and asking, what are you guys doing? How can we collaborate? How is that we got Project Search together? Now they want us to talk to other boards in the U.S. And so it's exciting to hear Gadsden being mentioned in other places. We presented last night. I did a collaboration with our Gadsden team, and that was also an amazing. It was in culture and being bilingual and serving our people down in the South, and how is that we got the program started down there. And I wasn't able to go to the leadership retreat as I had to travel over here and other personal stuff going on. But thank you so much, and welcome to all the new employees, the new teams. I'm super excited for the SPED division, the new people. I've been Googling some of you, and it's super exciting knowing all the experience that you guys have. Here's to a new year. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to Board Member Castillo.
Thank you. Like everybody else, thank you, everybody. It's good to see the faces and, smiling, ready for this. It's kind of weird because, as Ms. Rodriguez mentioned, we went to the leadership retreat, and we had 2 workshops, right, Thursday and Friday, and, it had been mentioned before that whenever we go to conferences, you go and enjoy yourselves. But, it was pretty interesting having the 2 workshops, getting, work done, and then getting reinvigorated as you guys were. There was this one breakout session that, gets you going again, gets you prepared for this upcoming year. It's always, sometimes we just think, oh, here we go again, right? But it's great to find something that new, nuance, if you will, to say, okay, we've been doing good, but we just found something that we can do better. And whoever thinks that good is good enough, we always strive for better. And it is a testament to you guys. And as I've always said, 4 kids, product of Gadsden. They have 4 bachelors, 2 masters. And it's all because of you in the trenches. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Moving on to Board Member Lira.
Just echoing what everybody, my colleagues have said here, welcoming everybody back. May was intense, guys. I mean, I was able to realize how much work you guys put into into graduations, into the whole school year. I was able to participate in some events, and honestly, I was exhausted. I cannot imagine what you guys went through throughout the year to put this together. I'll be honest, on graduations, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be the same thing over and over, and it was not. To my surprise, every graduation had something special, something that I was able to grasp. I remember the video from Gadsden, and it was just an amazing video. It was like, wow, like the things that that you guys were able to put together. And I mean, looking from the outside towards the work that you guys do, it's incredible. Honestly, I was exhausted. I mean, I was able to even disconnect a little bit from the board for about a month. So I can't imagine what you guys go throughout the whole year. So I want to commend you guys for the work and putting the faces to all of the names that I see all the time. It's amazing. So thank you for all your hard work. And I know that school starts May 31st and another year of July 31st. July 31st. So another year of much success. Thank you for everything you guys do. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lira. For myself, I want to, first of all, thank all the parents of Gadsden Independent School District for entrusting your children with us here in the Gadsden Independent School District. I also want to welcome all of our new administration, both at our high schools, elementaries, middle schools, and here in central office. Welcome, bienvenidos a Gadsden. Let's see. And then I also attended the leadership retreat. I take it as like, you know how we have sometimes in districts, we have convocations to like pump up everybody. So like I would agree with Mr. Castillo, there's one particular presentation by a girl, a young lady that just recently graduated, became a lawyer. And so to me, that was inspirational. And it was like my own version of a convocation as a board member, because as board members, we also need to be pumped up to start the new year. So I really appreciate that. Let's see, and I'm gonna keep it short. I'm gonna end with Dak Prescott's quote here. Here we go, Gadsden 2024-25, and welcome. Okay, moving on to board member report. No, we already did that. Human resource report. That does not require any action on behalf of the board. That is for public knowledge. Okay, moving on to item 6. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the agenda as is.
Mr. Castillo has made a motion to accept the agenda as is. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 7, our regular school board minutes for June 13, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to accept the regular school board minutes.
Okay, Ms. Secretary Rodriguez has made a motion to accept item number 7, as she stated. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, I would like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda. Before I take the vote, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, with that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to open forum, Ms. Delgado, do we have any speakers that would like to address the board this evening?
Madam President, we have none.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to action items, we do have, I believe, 4 action items this evening. We're going to start with 10A, Open Meetings Act. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, first item on the agenda this evening is our Open Meetings Act. Mr. Snowdy, can you we need the resolution. It's not on the attachment, it's going to be from the agenda. While he's getting that up, so Open Meetings Act, this is really the component that governs how we conduct meetings, how our agendas are prepared, what the public is, their right to view and see what's going on in the meeting. It's really how we conduct our business of public education. And they're housed under what New Mexico Sunshine Laws, and so we will make sure it emphasizes transparency, and we want an informed, the idea is to build an informed public of what we do with their money, and really anything else around public education. I will tell you that as we pass this tonight, and typically we pass this every July, we will likely, after we get through some of the policy advisories, come back and have to pass it again in a few months once we get through the advisories, because there's some minor tweaks to this and how it's delivered. However, we want to start the year in compliance, and so I have this before you as the Open Meeting Act resolution.
Are there any further questions, comments, or concerns for Mr. Dempsey? Okay, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept action item A, Open Meeting Act resolution.
Okay, Board Member Castillo has made a motion to accept action item 10A. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to action item 10B, certification of annual capital asset inventory for the 2023-24. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Rivera is going to help us with this item.
Good evening, President Flores Salazar, board members, and Superintendent Dempsey. We are returning to present the certification of the annual capital asset inventory for fiscal year 2023 and 2024. As per the state audit rule, we are required to conduct an annual physical inventory of equipment at the end of each fiscal year. The District Finance Department is submitting the capital asset inventory to the board for certification in compliance with the state requirements. As of June 30, 2024, we have acquired $16.1 million in fixed assets additions for the current fiscal year. Our total balance in capital assets is currently $576.8 million. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions, comments, or concerns? I did have one question in viewing the report on page 24. I just wanted clarification because I noticed a lot of the items that are being stated on the report are like physical items. And so and throughout the report I saw like on page 24 you got Gadsden Middle School, La Union Elementary, and then you've got the amounts. What does that mean? Because it's just the name of the school.
The description of the asset, it may be related to, I will have to look at the specific page that you mentioned, but it may be building improvements or other type of assets.
Okay.
So it's just a description that was included in the purchase order at the moment the asset was added. So I will have to look in that specific item to let you know what it's exactly related to.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. So I'm just curious, is there
Page
like a separate
24?
report where you look at this, or? So is there a separate report that you would look at, to see specifically what it means? Because again, it's just the schools, but if you don't have the answer tonight, that's okay. We can.
I will look into that page and I will give you an answer.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, with that being said, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept action item B, certification of annual capital asset inventory.
Okay, Mr. Castillo has made a motion to accept action item 10B as he stated. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? A motion carries. Thank you very much, ma'am. Have a good evening. Okay, moving on to action item 10C, GBEAA, staff conflict of interest, request for nepotism waiver for Haley Dempsey. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Burciaga will present this item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. For the 23-24 school year, we had over 55 interns and student teachers on our campuses. Of that 55, 23 were student teachers. Having less vacancies than student teachers, we opened up a position in our platform so that all student teachers could apply for teaching positions. At that point, out of the 23, 16 student teachers applied and were interviewed for positions. Out of those 16, 10 were recommended by principals and were offered teaching positions. I bring this to your attention because Haley Dempsey was one of those student teachers who applied and followed the process and was recommended for a sixth-grade position. My mic went out there. Can you hear me again? As per GBEAA staff conflict of interest, nepotism, the school board does have the right to waive the nepotism rule for the family member of the local superintendent. Haley Dempsey is the daughter of Superintendent Travis Dempsey, and I'm asking that you waive this for the hire.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns? You have questions? Go ahead, ma'am.
No, I don't have a question. I actually just have a comment. I think that the policy is very clear. And I think that, personally, of course, I'm not going to say where I'm heading, but, we need to consider everything as an employee, right? If they're meeting the qualifications, and as you stated, I think I'm hearing that has been the case. You said 16 applied, and out of those 10 were recommended by principals, right? So I'm seeing that those qualifications have been met. So thank you. I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments?
I do have a question for Mr.
Leo?
Dempsey. Mr. Dempsey, being that Ms. Haley, and I'm sure that she's qualified, she is your daughter. What are the systems or mechanisms in place for maybe her whoever's above her? She's going to be a teacher, correct? I guess a principal, for her to do her job and don't feel, hey, you know what, I can't do anything to Haley because maybe I'm going to get repercussions through the superintendent. I mean, is there like a process? What process ensures that there's a proper, I guess, protocol in any if anything arises? Because that's one of my concerns.
Sure. Madam President, board members, what I would share with you is that we definitely try to have our principals work through our directors, which Mr. Araujo is elementary director, and so any concerns of that nature would go through him. I'm not Mr. Araujo's immediate supervisor. Ms. Hernandez is. And what we try to do is build layers in that system. I think, Ms. Flores, if you want to share, you had a conversation with legal counsel about that, and I don't know if you want to share those. And then Ms. Burciaga, I don't know if you want to share some components. It may help answer Mr. Lita's questions.
Okay, so yes, I did speak to council because I actually had very similar concerns that Mr. Lita did, is that I would agree definitely 100% with Ms. Rodriguez. Actually, one of my questions was going to be, is this individual, Haley Dempsey, fully qualified? And of course, I understand through the HR process, any individual who is going to apply and be interviewed has to be screened, make sure that there's a diploma, tests have been, everything is in there so that they are treated the same as everybody. So by you or HR approving the young lady's ability to apply, yes, that means that she is fully qualified to be an employee of the GISD district. The other major concern, which I did speak to council, was, what, I might use Mr. Dempsey's word, what mechanisms are in place from the HR or the district, because it is his daughter. What I'm afraid of is Mr. Dempsey is the immediate supervisor to principals, and principals would then be the supervisor to the assistant principals. So it was mentioned that there's several degrees of separation. She's starting her career at a teaching point, and so that makes sense. If anybody has questions, there is literally several degrees of separation that was mentioned. Also, what else? And then she did. I was advised to go ahead and ask that I get to ask you questions to both of you. So I will proceed with questions, but I don't want. I think you wanted to say something. So.
No, I'm open for questions, Madam President.
Okay, so I don't want to mention like schools or anything like that. I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't want to go there, but her supervisor will be an assistant principal or and a principal, and so we got to be prepared that either or can evaluate the individual. And you could very well answer me, well, we're going to go ahead and make the assistant principal the evaluator of this individual. Mm-hmm. But in the event of an emergency, what would be plan B to make sure that the principal is not, does that make sense? I guess I'm not going to let
Madam President, board members, Mr. Superintendent, respectfully, I am not fully prepared to answer that because it wasn't on the agenda. I do have some ideas about separation of duties when it comes to supervising principals, specifically because there is going to be a new principal evaluation implemented, and I would like to bring that back to the next board meeting and present that to you. And I think that will solve a lot of your questions and answer a lot of your questions.
Okay. And then what else? Okay. I don't want to be disrespectful or anything like that, but so this obviously for me would be the first time ever in the history of being a board member that this is the case. And so, hindsight, I guess I would have asked, questions beforehand, because my curiosity is that, obviously the young lady was interviewed, it is recommended. And so, did she sign a contract by any chance?
So, Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Dempsey, what we need to understand is that while there are policies, there are also labor laws that we have to adhere to, and treating an individual different in the hiring process would make us subject to violating those labor laws. So we treated this hire just as we would any other individual. We offered just as we would any other individual, and we did know we had to bring it to the board. If the board were to vote against this, we are able to retract everything we have offered.
Okay, so which leads me to my next question. So that's good to know that, y'all offered the same opportunities as any applicant, as any potential hiree. And so does that also include having the individual come to what I think is PD or welcoming?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Because yes, on Facebook, I did see a celebration of new employees, and I didn't know that was, I guess, legal. So.
Yes,
just
so
need
Madam President,
clarification.
members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, again, we treat every hire the same. We did know that we had to bring this for approval, and it is in our right to retract if necessary.
Okay. Okay. And so I was also advised, I guess those are what was called my before questions and my after questions. If it is the will of the board this evening to approve the waiver of nepotism for this individual, in the event, I want to be hopeful that there's no, like you said, you're not fully prepared to share how you would handle that, but in the event that fellow colleagues, start seeing favoritism towards this individual, how are we prepared to deal with that?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, we would treat this just as we would any other concern, any other complaint. We would offer our form that we do to every individual. They are able to remain anonymous within information being relayed to others. This would be no different as if any other complaint were to come to our department.
Okay. In the event also that a fellow teacher sees favoritism on the behalf of their supervisors, whether it's the principal or the assistant principal, it's kind of tricky because, like, if I was the teacher seeing favoritism, I would maybe hesitate to go to my supervisors for fear of retaliation. What is Plan B?
So, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, they are able to come directly to HR. We have employees that address their concerns for fear of retaliation. That happens today, and so that availability and access directly to HR bypasses all that, and we're able to handle those situations.
So they're not going to come back and state to us or anybody, well, they told us that we didn't follow chain of command.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, that has not happened when any other complaint has come straight to HR or when any other complaint has come to the board. We have addressed it, and so we wouldn't change our process for this.
Okay. That concludes my questions. Any further questions for Ms. Burciaga or Mr. Dempsey? Ms. Murillo, do you have any questions?
Yes. If we, I'm gonna apply what Mr. Castillo brings up a lot. So we said yes to this waiver. That's gonna open it for others, right, coming up and us saying yes to them. So can we revoke this for the board members as well?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, the answer is no.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
What, I'm gonna go ahead if I may. Ms. Murillo, and correct me if I'm wrong, she's just finished asking us if we can revoke this for board members, for example, if I would want my own daughter or my own son to come or my mother or whatever. And the answer is no, because I'm going to refer everybody to the policy. I think I already read it, Estrella, but I'm going to read it again. So a person who is a spouse, you can read all of that. No miro. The immediate family of a member of the board or superintendent may not be initially employed or approved for employment in any capacity in the district. So that right there, Ms. Murillo, it doesn't allow initial employment for any of our immediate family members. I do want to clarify, though, for some of you who might be thinking, and you might be thinking, but Flores has a family. I'm being transparent, I do. My husband, when I came on the board, My husband is an employee, currently is an employee, and my mom was an employee. But if you see the policy further, I could run for school board member because it's not initial placement. So just for clarification. Did you have any other questions, Ms. Murillo?
I just have a comment. And I know, Ms. Borcega, you stated this, but I have a question actually. Why was this not presented at the last meeting? Because I feel like my hands are tied, and I have to say yes because it has been already put out there that she was hired. There's pictures, there's congratulations, and so how come this wasn't brought up before the hiring process or before the postings?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. So the timing of this happened to be that when, last time we met, we had opened up the pool. At that time, student teachers had not been recommended, they had not been offered. In between last board meeting and this board meeting, all this occurred, and so I am bringing it for approval today.
Do you have any further questions, Ms. Murillo?
No, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Any further
Yes,
questions, Mr. Reno?
Can you just explain to me again the process? Because I just for my understanding, how was she selected from the pool?
Sure. So the process is that we had 23 student teachers, right? And we did not have as many vacancies. So we then sent out an email and contacted every student teacher, asking them if they were interested in applying for the open positions we had at Gadsden. At that time, out of the 23, 16 replied with interest and actually submitted an application on the system and applied to jobs they were interested in. Then the principals pulled from their applicants, called, interviewed, reviewed, and selected the person they wanted for the job. And out of the 23, 16 were selected by principals. Thank you.
Do you have any further comments?
I do. I'm just trying to word it correct. How? Mr. Dempsey, can you? Is there like some sort of I guess not commitment though, but what is your posture, or do you feel that it would be that I guess what am I trying to say? How can I?
Madam President,
Go ahead, Mr.
maybe this comment might answer your question, Mr. Lina, if I may. Mr. Dempsey already knows where he stands with the board. Mr. Dempsey already knows where he stands with the staff. So, I'm sure that he relayed this information to his daughter. I'm sure the expectations are high. As parents, we hold our kids to a higher standard sometimes we hold them to too high of a standard. As kids, we try and make sure that we don't let our parents down. If we're not gonna allow, and again, we know we have a shortage of teachers. We know we're in need of teachers. We're not offering, this girl the opportunity without even, she passed her interview. She's got the qualifications. We're not going to allow her because of her last name. If we don't need teachers, then we wouldn't have hired her, right? So that being said, where she's going to be at, the principal, now I got to choose my words. The principal is not going to let anything pass by. That being said, who's to say that Mr. Dempsey's daughter herself would come and tell him, Dad, things aren't working the way they're supposed to. It works both ways. But at this moment, we need teachers. We have a teacher, and right now, from what I'm hearing, we're not gonna, it seems like nobody wants to give her an opportunity because of her last name.
I just want to add to that, Mr. Castillo. No, I don't think it's her last name. I think it's because of the policy. I mean, I'm sure that that she's a fine young lady. I'm pretty sure that she will exceed any expectation. But the thing is that what does the I mean, even I mean at any job. I mean, you know that she's your daughter's your daughter's boss. Are you gonna act the same towards her or towards the employee? And I don't think it's Mr. Dempsey itself, and I can clarify right here, Mr. Dempsey, this conversation would have happened with whoever it is. I mean, it's your daughter, and that's why we're having this conversation, but it's not directly directed at Mr. Dempsey or his last name. I want to leave that for record. I want to make sure that as well, that the principals feel that that they can do their job. That's it. That's the, and I do agree with you. We do need teachers, but then does a conversation open as far as legislators? We open and we change the policy, because right now it clearly states that it's only for superintendent. But I know the lady that actually got elected for this seat, and then she got offered a job and she couldn't be in the board. I mean, do we go ahead and change the nepotism for school board members? I mean, no.
Madam President,
go ahead, Mr. Castillo.
I think that's at the state level. I don't think that's on ours. On
here?
us. Yeah, and for being an employee and being on the board, I think that's at a state level.
Or changing the policy for at a local level, because I'm pretty sure we could change this.
Well, but if the state says you can't, it would have to start there, right? Whether or not we say we can, it would have to start there, because we're governed by the PED, right?
No, but I'm talking about just this, for what I said, yes, but maybe for person, I mean, wouldn't we be able to change the members of the board to work here at local level, or is that the state?
Well, I'm sure that would be at the local level, right? But again, what we, I guess long story short.
But and I know what you're trying to say, though. That's just that's my idea. Yeah.
If my opinion, if we're going that route, then we do want to start a whole can of worms that we want to do away with this. It's in place because we want to make sure the people, we're fortunate enough that we're in a place where we can have people around us. And they struggled is small districts, that even with small districts that there is nobody available, even at the state level, they deny them, right? So, I mean, again, this is our policy. Right now, this is our policy. And, we can grant the waiver. And that being said, I'll grant the waiver.
So Mr. Castillo has made a motion to grant the waiver. I was just going to add, to just remind all of us, is that after that blurb that I read, that's where I think is kind of interesting, honestly, that it says, don't do it, and then it says, but the school board may waive the nepotism rule for family members. So it's like, don't do it, and then you can do it, which is weird to me. So if it is the will of the board, we're not violating anything this evening, and we move forward. Just wanted to point that out. But there is a motion that Mr. Castillo has made to waive the waiver of nepotism. So, yeah, so let's go ahead. I guess I'm gonna go ahead and, I'm gonna ask Secretary Murillo. Or no, actually, no, it's not. It's a bad, because we can't hear. Go ahead, ma'am, and take roll call.
Mr. Castillo?
Aye.
Ms. Flores?
No.
Mr. Lira?
Nay.
Ms. Murillo?
No.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
The noes have it, so we don't approve the waiver of the nepotism. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, moving on, action item 10C, actually 10D, Board Policy Advisory, Title IX Policy, Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Burciaga and Ms. Mejia will present this item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey. I have for you to present tonight.
Excuse me, I would remind the public to please keep your side conversations. If you would like to talk, I would ask you that you step outside the board room. Thank you very much. Go ahead, ma'am.
I have for you tonight a set of policies for your approval. I'd like to present these in a particular order as they are grouped together and interrelated. I will draw your attention to those that are highlighted by a blue rectangle. The first is AC, non-discrimination, equal opportunity. This is the general non-discrimination policy for our district. The policy advisory has recommended and made amendments to this policy to include all protected characteristics and also to delineate that there is a specific policy for employees and for students, and that any sex discrimination complaints go through the policy directly below that that's highlighted in yellow, ACA, non-discrimination on the basis of sex. Those are the new Title IX policies that are now in alignment with the 2024 regulations set out on April 19th, 2024, and that must be in place. We must be compliant. They are effective August 1st, 2024. The preceding two rectangles are the non-discrimination policies GBA that is specific to employees. The following is JB, equal education opportunities specific to students. The three rectangles are all in the category of non-discrimination policies that are not based on sex. Again, all include the updated protected characteristics or protected categories. Those three are up for your approval. We currently have existing policies that read the same, except for are not updated with all of the protected classes. The policy writers have also streamlined to ensure that we have one form that is the procedure for filing a complaint that is not sex-based, as well as one grievance form. Again, the highlighted in yellow policy is the non-discrimination on the basis of sex. That's our Title IX policies. You will have then its regulation and two exhibits. One is the complaint form, and the other is the notice of non-discrimination that must be provided to all stakeholders. There are some deletions in policies because of the streamlining. The category gender and gender identity as a protected class, as well as the gender affirming healthcare. Those are now protected categories that have been streamlined into the three non-discrimination policies. Lastly, there are three policies: IHBCA, programs for pregnant and parenting students; JIE, pregnant and parenting students; and JIG, married students. These are all existing policies in our board. They only have now added Title IX as a reference in the legal references at the end of the policies because they're all interrelated. Passing these policies will ensure we're compliant with the 2024 Title IX regulations. Again, that's August 1st, 2024. They are the policy writers making overdue amendments to these policies, including gender and gender identity as a protected class. That happened in 2023 with an amendment to the New Mexico Human Resources Act. Human Rights Act. I'm in HR mode. And lastly, it streamlines the process for a complaint and for grievances. I stand for questions.
Questions, comments, or concerns for Ms. Mejia?
Actually, yes.
Go ahead, sir.
So can you explain to me a little bit more about the gender identity and what policy? Can you just educate me a little bit on that policy here with us, and if that's already established?
Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, gender and gender identity was named as a protected class. The New Mexico Human Rights Act, that was an amendment in 2023. While these policies did not have that added or updated, it stands because it is part of the law. Now they are updating the policies to include that as a protected class. In the state of New Mexico, for the 2024 Title IX regulations, which is federal law and it's federal regulations. It also has been added as a protected category, even though districts across the country have been functioning under that definition because of direction from the Education Department and court cases and decisions throughout the country.
Meaning protected class, like how are they protected, or what does it entail?
If I can go to the next slide, please. Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, these are all of the protected characteristics. The district does not discriminate in race, age, religion, so on and so forth. You'll see there that you will find gender, gender identity, gender-affirming healthcare, pregnancy, reproductive health care. Those are all protected categories, and the district cannot discriminate any entity based on those categories.
Do you have another comment, Mr. Lira?
No, I do. I mean, I on this one, so, I mean, it's an action item that we have to pass, correct? I mean,
Correct.
And Mr. Dempsey is, so on this policy, I mean, and I guess I'm gonna ask for it, does this protect it, I guess, the issue that happened a couple of years back throughout the nation, I mean, the restrooms, is it already in Gadsden, which, I mean, I'm not aware, so anybody can go to, however you identify, you go to each restroom, or if you identify as such, you go into one restroom or you go to the other, would this protect certain people doing that in Gadsden today?
So, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, the district and federal law says we cannot discriminate against gender identity. Any time that we have a situation in which we're grappling through this issue, we do so with a student, with their parents, and make sure that whatever accommodations we have in place do not discriminate against the student. It is a protected class. I will recognize that there is litigation throughout the country just based on gender and gender identity. New Mexico, the state, does not have any injunctions, does not have any limitations currently to implement the 2024 regulations. So we are set to be compliant by August 1st, 2024. In the case that we do, we would revert back to the 2020 regulations. And we have been functioning, protecting all of these protected classes, even with the 2020 regs, because that is the direction from the Department of Education, as well as court cases throughout the nation.
Mr. Dempsey, just because I do have an issue with this, can we go ahead and, I mean, I don't know if I can make a motion or you can guide me how to do it, and table it, I guess keep this going for the next meeting so I can educate myself more, because I think that, I mean, me as personally, today, I mean, I cannot vote yes on this, but if I'm able to get more information throughout and be able to understand that maybe I can go ahead and consider it, and my lack of research on this inhibits me from voting yes. Is there like a motion that we can do to table it and keep it for the next meeting? Is that allowed?
Madam President, board members, Board Member Lita, absolutely, you have the authority as a board you can act on the item, you can, and one of those actions could be to table it. What I would want the board to consider, if that becomes the will of the board, we would probably need to look for a special meeting time so that we can get this hopefully ironed out by August 1st. I apologize for the late notice of this. I want you to keep in mind, I had been on the phone with the policy attorney at least 2 months ago asking about this. Ms. Mejia had brought it to me. We received this policy advisory, as you did, Monday. And so I apologize for the timing of it. I think you make a very valid point. It's not a lot of time to get yourself wrapped around. It's a heavy lift. So if the board chooses to go there, we would just need to look probably for a time of a special meeting so that we could hammer those things out in public.
I asked the board if you guys allow me. I mean, I would like to table it, and if not, we can, I mean, take it for a vote right now. Whatever you guys decide.
Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, I do not mean to interrupt. I do want to make note, as Superintendent Dempsey said, this policy alert was not sent to us until, I was under the impression it was Tuesday, Mr. Dempsey? Maybe Monday? I'm not sure. I will let you know that it was held up because of the litigation across the country, but that litigation does not stop New Mexico from being liable for compliance with a federal regulation. And on top of that, Board Member Lira, it is already a protected class in state law through the New Mexico Human Rights Act. However, Mr. Dempsey, Superintendent Dempsey is correct. We would need to call another meeting before August 1st because we must be compliant by August 1st.
Ms. Mejia, does that mean like approval by August 1st so that you can send your paperwork? So technically it'd have to be before, ¿verdad? Just to give you, how many
Correct.
days in advance to do whatever you need to do?
Correct.
So realistically, how many days in advance would you need so that you and your team can, I mean, it's almost like inevitable that this got passed. So how many days in advance do you need to make sure that you send it via however before
Madam
August
President,
1st?
members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, as many days as you all can offer me are going to be beneficial. These notices have to go out to our staff members and our students and their families.
So colleagues, what are we thinking? Mr. Lira has requested for us to consider tabling and with the possibility of doing a special meeting.
I think, I mean, that tabling only if you guys think that there's going to be a different outcome, but if it's not, I mean, we can just take it for a vote. I mean, if you guys think that you guys are set on what you guys are going to do, I know what I need to do, and I mean, if it's not going to change the outcome, might as well take it for a vote. But if it's something that you guys are going to think and be like, hey, you know, this is something that I need to, that goes against my values or your morals, whatever the case may be, and you guys are going to take on it, then let's do the meeting. But if it's not, let's take it for a vote today.
Any comments?
Flores, I have a question for Ms. Mejia. Maybe Mr. Dempsey. When, because I've seen this in other schools, when someone wants to use the opposite sex restroom, I have seen principals or assistant principals asking the student to go to the nurse's office and use the restroom there. For me, that's already discrimination because they feel comfortable going to the opposite sex restroom, right? Because that's how they identify. So if this is like, will this be communicated to those schools, to every single school, that we all follow the same protocol? Because I understand what you're saying, that accommodations. For me, an accommodation is, well, you have this other option, go use the nurse's restroom, or come and use the central office restroom. But and that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, can the student make the decision of, I want to use the girls' restrooms? Can they do that? And is it something that it can be the same message across the district?
Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, we currently function under case by case with our building principals. In practice, in human resources, working as a Title IX coordinator, we engage in these conversations with our administrators and develop plans. An accommodation can be if the student and their family feel that it is in their best interest and for their safety to use an alternate bathroom. It is made available to them. It is not required.
Madam President, board members, I would just remind the board that while we are working through policy, and it is probably for each of you a little bit of a heavy lift, right? Our principals are already managing this. And again, like many times in the past, I come back to, they're already taking care of it. And we've had situations where individuals felt like they were more comfortable maybe participating in another sport, right? And we've been able to manage that at a campus level. So I just want you to know, it's not like this, I don't think this opens any magic gate. They're already working through these pieces. So I think it's important to know that.
So I guess I would just want, I guess the communication is key between families. And then I'm just going to add, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the event that you got the opposite side where, families, which I've heard in my community too, they're not comfortable with that idea. That family also has the right to go talk to their administrators and make alternate, everybody has the right to go talk to the principal and make accommodations, request them and meet with them. So I think the key is communication. Okay. Are there any further questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make the motion, or I would like to proceed with voting. So let me see. I make the motion that the board accepts action item 10D, Board Policy Advisory Title IX policies.
Madam President, I'm not sure that Mr. Lida did or didn't, but I would like for him to say that he takes that one off just to make sure we cover our bases.
That what? Can we repeat that again?
Yeah, to say that he pulls back wanting to table it just to cover our bases.
To be courteous, okay. How do you feel, Mr. Lida?
I would like to table, to retract my motion to table the item.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, sir.
Item
D.
Item D.
Okay, so Mr. Lida has retracted his motion. So with that being said, I did make a motion for the board to approve Board Policy Advisory Title IX policies. Ms. Delgado, can you please, actually, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you for your presentation, ma'am.
Thank you.
I didn't get it. Well, no, I was. Yeah, I wanted to, for the record, just a nay on me on this.
Okay. I apologize because you said nay, huh? I'm sorry, Christian. I'm so sorry. So yeah, you got that, Ms. Delgado. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 11, which is our discussion items for this evening. The first one is 11A, Early Out Wednesday. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Hernandez is going to present this item.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I'm not sure, do you guys have a question for me on Early Out Wednesdays, or did you just want me to speak to it?
Mr. Hernandez, I can jump in there. I know this was a request, and one of the things that I think I want the board to understand, first of all, when we talk about Early Out Wednesdays, in part, we're talking about the calendar. We've now had Early Out Wednesdays for 2 years, right? Is that correct? 2 years? And we've utilized that time for what we call PLCs. And so I can see that there's a possibility that people, individual stakeholders and community members might be concerned, how are we using that time? Students aren't in school, and so how are we utilizing that time? And so what I would share with you is that part of our high reliability schools framework, one critical component is teacher collaboration. So giving teachers time to collaborate around one of the most important components is what you should hear the term if you talk to teachers, unit planning. So we want to make sure that they're spending time on Wednesdays planning, and so we'll put, let's just say all fourth grade teachers are together and they're planning how that unit plan of how they're going to deliver one particular standard. These standards are all tied to what we're calling proficiency scales. So proficiency scales are driven by the idea that we really focused in on what teachers, not what Travis or superintendent, what teachers believe are the most important standards. So they're, in essence, they're building that unit plan around what they've said are the most important standards. Ms. Hernandez, did I miss anything there?
No, yes, and so I just want to talk about our Early Out Wednesdays. In our principals, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, I'm sorry. Today in our Teachers Academy, we actually outlined the pieces for like our administrators. What does it look like when we're having Early Out Wednesday? One of the things we don't want, and so we provided some frameworks and guidelines for them. We don't want it to be a staff meeting, right? Because we have heard that. And so we're working on these pieces. That does not mean, for example, that the principal won't take 10 minutes or the instructional coach take 20 minutes to say, here's the agenda, our focus is assessment, our focus is, whatever we're resources or what are we working on. I think another misconception now that we've done it 2 years is that we originally had said no PD on that day. But we have found that some campuses have gaps and that we have to provide some PD because we're not seeing things on the unit plan. For example, ELD scaffolds, special ed scaffolds, language, ELD standards in the unit plans. So depending on data, we've already started working a lot on the data piece because as you're aware, we transitioned to the Marzano framework for instruction, and we did cohort 1 and cohort 2, and so last year we finished cohort 2. So now there is no cohort 1 and cohort 2. We're all doing the same thing, right? And so now the focus is really on the implementation of this instructional framework, our proficiency scales, which the board will be very happy. I can't wait until we present this. They will be online, so that our parents know exactly what their kids are learning and what they should be learning and how they're being graded and all these pieces that we've been presenting to you all. The other piece too is, on occasion, for example, our special education group, a campus might only have an SEC classroom in one campus. So of course they can't PLC. We may do a virtual with them. Their needs are very different. Again, if you are in a high school ELA classroom or what we call our ESL classrooms, if you're a level 1, you're going to look very different than an ELA monolingual English. So there's supports, our specialists are supporting, our coaches are supporting. So that's what's happening right now, and today we did outline that for our principals, just kind of what we want to see. Another thing that we are implementing is to make sure that our specialists and some of our directors, Mr. Dempsey and I, on occasion, our schedules get really busy, but we want to really make it out to the campuses too, so that we're able to just observe what's happening, because really like the collaborative piece is your leaders, your teacher leaders working in groups, the coach supporting, the principal monitoring, asking what's going on, and using those pieces as they go into the classroom and support the instruction as they're doing walkthroughs and things like that. Any questions for me?
Go ahead, Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. So I think that on that end, it's excellent, right? It gives a perfect opportunity to really continue with the Marzano framework. On that end, it's great. Now, what about when the students are in class? They go in, it's a half day, or, it's cut shorter. So what is expected of the students? What are they supposed to be doing? And how are the teachers making sure that that is being done during that time?
Okay, Madam President and members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. So we've left that autonomy to campuses, and again, that's why we think that it's very important for us to walk through. So I'll give you some examples. One of the things we've done is, if you're aware, 5th grade takes the science test, right? 8th grade takes the science test. So one of the things our data is showing that we're only doing the test that grade level, right? And so we're asking, some campuses will do just intervention that day. So principals look at data, pull groups, support the students in whatever the gaps are. Some people do that. Secondary schools might use that as the advisory period, maybe do some career readiness. Other campuses just shorten their schedule to have a regular day. And I think that as we have brought on our new testing coordinator and our new MLSS person, that we will be able to support those pieces. Now, we do understand that sometimes teachers will, and again, it's a piece on us in making sure that our administrators are using that time effectively, because we do have some teachers who don't use the time effectively. We understand that piece. And so again, that's also a management piece on our part and the principal. And so we will be asking, one of the things that we discussed is maybe asking for the schedule on your Wednesday. What are you doing on Wednesday, right? And it depends on the needs of the campus, and it depends on the needs of, on the data, really, to be honest with that piece. Yes. And we do have some of these questions, Madam President and members of the board, like at our trenches meeting, the staff will ask, well, we're not doing that, we're not doing that. So that's kind of our conversation with the campus, and that's how we find out some of the pieces. But again, the implementation of the walkthroughs on our part is going to be a piece that directors and specialists are doing this year. That's something we've changed.
And Madam President, I just want to make a comment that one of the things that I would hate to see is that the students are disengaged, just the fact that the classes are shorter and there's really not much being done, or that they feel that not much is being accomplished during that time. So I definitely think that, making sure that that time is being used wisely and effectively, not just, another day that's shorter. And, I don't know how we're standing on the chronic absenteeism. What are the Wednesdays looking? Are we missing a lot of the students during those days because they feel, why even go if we're not doing much during that time?
Yes, and Madam President and members of the board and Superintendent Dempsey, I appreciate that comment because we've had this conversation and it's really an adult problem. It's the teacher. If the teacher is saying, it's half a day, we don't have to do anything. And so our principals are really working on being intentional with that piece. For example, we have career readiness, we have the science piece. We could make it a different type of instructional day if needed. But yes, absolutely. We will be monitoring that piece.
Madam President, board members, I would add, I think there's something there we might want to watch for. I really appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I don't know that we can answer today whether students miss more on Wednesdays or not, but it is something that I think maybe we can take a look at and maybe bring the board up to speed on that, because that's an interesting idea. I would hope not, but to your point, and I tried to emphasize to the board when we passed these calendars with us, this is a great opportunity, and I don't want to lose it. Because then, how do we offer that teacher collaboration for them? But to the concern you maybe raise, we want to make sure every minute in class is, capturing instruction time, protecting instructional time, and make it effective instructional time, right? And so let us, what I'll promise you is that we'll try to figure out a tool that will allow us to track that a little bit, and we can compare it to other days of the week to see. My gut tells me Fridays are the most commonly missed days, but
Mondays.
I don't have that data for you right now, but let's take a look at it. Okay, we'll get it to you.
Yeah.
Any further questions, Ms. Rodriguez? No? Okay, so I do have, anybody else has questions? Mr. Lira, Mr. Castillo, Ms. Murillo?
Ms. Murillo, I forgot you.
Okay, so I'm going to proceed with my questions. So, thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, for asking to bring this item to the agenda. So there are some questions actually that I have on the topic, and so I actually was asking Superintendent Dempsey when we were approving the agenda, is how do we, so obviously I'm all for the early release, and I see the vision, the goals behind doing that. My question is, how do you all get feedback from the teachers as a way of accountability, is the word I'm going to use, to make sure that in fact they are running effectively, that they're purposeful, in the event that somebody's saying, well, this is not purposeful, or they have concerns, what's the protocol to address? Because earlier I referred, well, there's chain of command. So if I'm a teacher and I feel that they're not being purposeful, would I go to my principal? If it's the IS who is not, I guess, so that's the question. Go ahead.
So, Madam President and members of the board, one of the things we want to reiterate is that it is our administrators should be in there, right? Because we do have, for example, a unit plan template that should be used. So this year, for example, you have the unit plan template, you have your scale, you should be aligning assignments. There's a lot of work to be done. I think that if there's a teacher or somebody who feels that it's not purposeful, I would definitely ask, like, the instructional coach, if they're familiar with it. Their supervisor could also support them, because we also have, we do have individuals who don't like to collaborate, right? They don't want to collaborate. And so also, so for them, it's a waste of time, things like that. Because we hear that, they'll call me, we're like, oh, this is a waste of time. And then, so, you know, my response to that is, I always want to look at your data, right? Because right now, we don't even meet the intervention standard for students, right? We know that 80% of our kids have to be proficient. So Tier 1 instruction is super important, and planning is what gets that movement. And so I think that if they're not finding it purposeful, we're not doing it correctly, I would definitely hope that the administrator or the instructional coach would reach out so that I could send support. That's why I have specialists, that's why we have coaches. And are we doing it wrong? What are we doing? Like, are we looking at data? Are we looking at students? Are we looking at SAP packets? Are we looking at last year's scores and this year's scores? Are we looking at growth models? So I think that if they need support in something like that, my team is available to help. Like, my specialists can go and train you how to sit and do a PLC, right? We have, there's structure to it. There's questions that you should be asking as you're planning. And so we use DeForest for questions. And so if that is something that a campus is struggling, I would hope the individual will reach out to the instructional coach, to Mr. Araujo, to myself, because then I could really, and I can tell you already where we do have some gaps because the data shows it, right? I can't have a school that did iStation and 0% of the kinders are proficient. Something is missing here. And the goal is not to say, hey, you're not proficient. I've got to go find out. So I'll send our reading specialist to be like, what's going on? Are you doing the time? Are we faithful to the program? Are you giving the test to Spanish speakers in English, right? And so as we dig into data, we're already seeing some patterns in some campuses, so we've already kind of targeted where we need to go. But if this is something that came to you or an individual, please have them reach out, because I think it's important, because a lot of it is fear of the unknown, and if they don't feel, sometimes when people tell me the kids can't do it, what I hear is, I don't know how to teach it, right? And so that's why we have these layers and these elements of coaches and specialists. So that's what the job is for them. And I'd like for us to be used effectively. And so if that's not the case, I would need to know so that I can restructure or do something else, reorganize.
And then it's interesting because I did have a question when you said the non-collaborators. So how are we trying to engage them and, accountability to those non-collaborators? How are we dealing with that?
So, Madam President and members of the board and Superintendent Dempsey, it's gotten better because you have to be part of the team. And so part of it is, again, the walkthroughs. Our goal is to have teachers say, this is a scale, this is what I'm teaching, but this is how I'm going to teach it, to give the teacher the autonomy, right? You got to teach multiplications or whatever it says. You do it however you want. You want to stand on your head, you want to put balloons. But I think that is why our coach and our admin has to be walking around in that, that's actually a non-negotiable we discussed today. Because if you have that person, where are you? We also know, to attendance, we do have some individuals who take off that Wednesday afternoon, right? And so again, it is a management piece on the principal side. These are the difficult conversations. These are the, what's going on? How can I help you? But as we're walking into classrooms, all of this grade level is supposed to be doing something, and if you're not, then that's that conversation on our evaluative piece, right? What's going on? You've been missing, you gotta catch up. I think there's another misconception, is that Wednesdays is the only day we PLC. It's not, right? We have a lot of days to PLC. You can have maybe 2 days to grade and do your thing. But our business is to improve student outcomes and teach. So we've got to meet as individuals. So, yes.
Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, so,
Madam President and members of the board, I just want to invite you to the HRS conference next week. Please try and come. It's going to be
what
at
days are
Santa
those?
Teresa High School, the 24th and 25th.
Is it all day?
If you can stop by, I would appreciate it. Just so you can see kind of what we do. We are including our teacher leaders now. So we'll have staff that we want to really build capacity and start moving them into the instructional coach role, the admin roles, and all that. So we're very excited. It took us a long time to plan it.
Okay, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you. If you need anything, please call me.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, moving on to discussion item 11B, policy advisories 238 through 245. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, each of you should have a printed out packet. These advisories were emailed to each of you by myself and Mr. Guillen. We spent a little time some of us were able to spend a little bit of time in discussing these with some legal counsel during the retreat in Taos. And so you can consider this first read, obviously a discussion item. The important pieces are each one of these connect to the Open Meetings Act, which is why probably once we get through these, we'll have to come back and approve a new Open Meetings Act because there's some little pieces of it. And so what I tried to do is just quickly on the cover summarize each one. There's overlap. So what happens in policies is they may talk about how something is like minutes are required in one policy and it refers to minutes in another. Well, if it had to do with minutes, it's going to put them in both. So some of the advisories are repeated language in multiple policies, if you will, okay? So I'll just try to go through each one. And there's one in particular that I really am going to need some feedback from you. I'll get through the whole list, but I'll point it out, and then I'll try to listen to the board. If you have questions, though, stop me and let's try to get through any concerns or ideas you might have as we go through this. So Policy Advisory 238, this is Policy B 200. It's under Board Powers and Responsibilities. The advisory removes the old training requirements and it adds specific training requirements for new board members. It's a total of 10 hours per year, and then it clarifies the training requirements for other board members. That requirement is 5, but it's very specific to what those items need to be. Now, I did talk to Mr. Guillen about this. New Mexico School Boards Association is working to address the training hours that through the conferences they already hold. So you'll be able to capture, like one in particular is about finance. You have to have, everybody has to have so many hours in finance training. They'll offer sessions specific to it, so you'll get those credits right there. So really, I'm hoping they align this to where if you participate in the conferences and do those type of things, then you're able to hit those training requirements, okay? Any questions on 238? 239, B1400, school board meetings. This one's the one that I'm going to flag it now. I'm going to read through my notes, and then I'll get through it all, and then I want to come back to you. So this one has a little bit of meat, a little bit more meat to it. Requires live audio and video webcasts of board meetings accessible through the district's website. Great news. You can check that box. We already do it. It's already done, okay? Live webcasts shall include a user interface that allows members of the public to submit written or verbal comments. Put a little star, put a big star by that one, maybe, right? Next one, superintendent may develop regulations or procedures related to the public submission of written or verbal comments. So what they're saying to us is we need to offer this. I need to get guidance from the board. What do you want it to look like? And then I need to write the regulations and the process to meet that, okay? Recordings of the webcast shall be posted on the district website within 1 week of the meeting's conclusion. The good news, these literally are almost posted instantaneously because I think the way YouTube is set up is once we close the meeting, it's already there. Webcast recordings shall be available for at least 3 years following the date of the meeting. Now that's a very new requirement. Meeting notice shall include a link to access the webcast. So typically what we've done with the webcast is put the link on the agenda. We now, once these are passed, we'll need to include it on the notice. So a notice is 10 days prior to the board meeting. An agenda needs to be posted 72 hours prior to, okay? Kind of put a pin in that one because that's the one we want to come back to a little bit. 240, that's B 1581, executive sessions and open meetings. Adds, let me back up. As a elected board, there are very specific items you can go into executive session for, and they're very limited. There's not a long list. They added to that list bargaining strategy preliminary to collective bargaining. So negotiations. So when the time of the year comes up that collective bargaining occur, the board can go into an executive session to discuss those negotiations. okay? That's a topic they added that allows executive session.
Mr. Garcia.
Question?
Yes, on that one. So I get that it's in closed session. Who would be like the participants, like, since we're bargaining, or the district is bargaining with union members, is the president there, or who would be there?
The board, like, I guess at any level, anytime you have an executive session, the board has the option to invite anyone they choose. Like, for example, you may or may not invite the superintendent to each executive session. You may or may not invite, but you could. So I think if your question is, could you invite the union president or members? You could. What typically this is going to be used for, typically when you get to negotiation, you have a district team and you have a union team. And what you might want to do is sit with your district team and have a conversation about how they're going to approach the negotiation. Here's the items. Maybe Ms. Burciaga currently heads up our district team, and you may say, these are the items we would like to negotiate or see negotiate. Now, keep in mind, there's only a limited number of items you can bring to negotiation. I think it's 6. That's lined out in the CBA and the process of how that's done. Did I answer your question? The board can invite anyone they choose into executive session.
Madam President, I know that in the past, I mean, it surprises me that this was allowed, because, I mean, in the past, I thought we had already been doing it, because, I mean, obviously, the district wants something, and it may or may not be what the union wants, right? So, I mean, in the past, what we've done is, we have a conversation with whoever's leading the district team and say, this is what we're shooting for, and then go negotiate. Because I know that for a long time, I had asked if we could sit, and they don't allow us, right? So, I mean, I don't know that we would want to, and not that we don't want to invite the union, but again, I doubt it that the union would want to come into closed session and tell us, this is what we want from you, right?
No, you make a very good point, and that's why I was asking, because I know that we were trained that you don't, as board members, you don't participate at all with the union. So that's why I asked my questions. So I guess I'm interpreting it'd be more. Well, thank you. I appreciate. We can invite anybody, but since we are part of the district, it's more to invite the representatives of the collective bargaining team of the district. I think would make more sense.
And Madam President, I think I think everybody's on the right page there. It's a very specific language, and I used it specifically. It's bargaining strategy preliminary to collective bargaining negotiation. So I think what it is alluding to is the district trying to determine, let's just say we have 6 items. What 6 items are we going to present? And to Mr. Castillo's point, there have been very specific items that have come up in the past that the board said, hey, we need to fix this. We need to work on this. And that maybe they're HR related, things of that nature. Okay, this says, oh, you can go there just to talk about, it doesn't have to be HR related. It could just talk specifically about the preliminary strategy, right? So to what you alluded to, I think, was negotiations are now going on. Now you're not going to go into executive for this. Preliminary strategy. What do we want to share? What do we want to work on? And it's a benefit to all of us because the CBA helps us support our employees. So there's a benefit to that. Oh, I'm sorry. I got lost there. I was reading for a second. 241, B1650, it's BEDA, notification of board meetings. Adds the language, all meeting notifications shall include a link to enable the public to access the webcast of the board meeting. So again, like we described, we have been putting on the agenda. Once we pass this, it'll be on the agenda and the notice, okay? 242, that's B1750, BEDBA, agenda preparation and dissemination. Adds meeting notifications and agendas shall include a link to the webcasting for board meetings. Policy Advisory 243, B2100, BEDG, minutes. Adds language, a copy of any minutes approved at a meeting shall be posted on the district's website within 1 week of the meeting conclusion and available for 3 years following the date of the meeting. So consider today, you approved the meetings, the minutes for the regular board meeting for June 13th, 2024. We now have, once this is passed, we have 1 week to get that posted because it was approved now. To get that posted, and then we have to keep up to 3 years from the date of that meeting of those minutes. Okay. Policy Advisory 244, B 2150, BEDH, public participation at board meetings. It's the same as Policy 239, which is the one I told you, put a pin in that one, right? We got to come back and have a conversation. And then 245, this is important, C100, CB, superintendent, adds language that limits actions taken by the board between the date of the regular election in which board positions are on the ballot and 60 days after the convening of the newly elected board. So let's try to get a calendar in our mind. Typical elections are November, right? So new board members typically start January 1st. So November, December, January, February, and I think January and February, whatever gets you to 60 days after that January 1st, anytime in that window, you can't do anything. You can't extend a superintendent's contract. You can't terminate a superintendent's contract. That locked down for some reason, well, there was, I think there were some actions taken at different times, but the board can't take action on the superintendent's contract during that time. You got to have a lot of requirements to it, so there has to be an election with board members on the ballot. If board members are not on the ballot, then you have every right to do that. Now, that does kind of mess with our evaluation cycle that we've talked about. And so somewhere, once we get through this, let's come back and have a conversation about where a good evaluation cycle fits for the superintendent. Okay? Okay. So the one I'd asked you, which is, it's Policy Advisory 239, and it's identical language on 244. Where I need your feedback and input is this idea of live webcast shall include a user interface that allows members of the public to submit written or verbal comments. That is, so one option, and I'm not, I really just need feedback from the board. One option could be that YouTube already allows comments. This doesn't speak to open forum. And I personally think that's an error on the legislator's part who drafted it, but it doesn't speak to it. So you don't have to put it under open forum. You can choose not to. Now, here's some of my concerns, and I think my group back there who I think do a pretty good job. It's hard to control online comments. It's hard to control who's making the online comments, right? It could be a name that we have no clue. It could be a made-up name, and they're online, and they're, wanting to say something. It's also really tough for us to shut that down. And then if we shut it down, are we repressing their First Amendment right? So that, this is I want you to know this is not an easy. I really wish our legislators had done a little bit better job of vetting this thing because the language is not great. The other option I thought about, and we can have a third or a fourth, the other option I thought about is, well, could I create, and it talks about, it gives us the option, written or verbal. So if I took the verbal out of it and said, if you participate online, you could submit a statement to us, and then that statement will be read during the open forum portion. That feels a little safer because then we get a chance to view what is being said, and if it really violates something, then a decision has to be made. Those are the thoughts in my mind. I've had a lot of drive time coming back from Taos and those pieces, so I just wonder what your thoughts are. And I really hope you'll share your true thoughts and feelings, because I want to make this work. And I'm going to warn you, I anticipate an amendment to the language, because everybody is wrestling, all 89 districts are wrestling with this thing right now. And we heard from, I think, 3 lawyers, had all 3 different guidance, right? That was joyous to hear.
It's funny, Mr. Dempsey, that
Yes, sir.
just to add, this issue just happened maybe for the past 3 meetings at the council chambers in Sunland Park.
Really?
This guy with a fake name has been, he gets on Zoom and then he starts rambling about a bunch of things, and everybody's like, who is this guy? And they're looking at it, because it's like, if I come with a paper bag on my head, you're not gonna allow me to speak. I mean, unless I show my face. And over there, these guys are being online talking just nonsense, all left and right. And everybody is like, okay, well, we have to allow them now because of policy, and they're trying to amend it, because for the past 3 meetings, he goes and talks about crazy stuff. And then they're just like, okay, but who are you? And then it's a fake name. Like, they don't turn on the camera, so that happens. We have to get that figured out.
I think you share just some of the complexities of managing this piece, and it is really difficult. And I want to put us in the place that, again, we're being transparent, we're giving people opportunities. However, we're also not just opening ourselves up to a boxing match and we get no boxing gloves. We right? Those situations, we have a responsibility to allow the community. Now, and always remember this. We choose to have, you as a board choose to have open forum. There's no requirement in the state of New Mexico to even have open forum at all. There is a requirement to allow the community to come view the meeting, not participate. I think there's wisdom to allowing and hear from your community, but you also, to what was described, I think have to be a little careful that you don't lose control of it very quickly. So those are my thoughts, but I appreciate that, Mr. Lita. Other ideas?
I don't even know what to say. It's like,
Madam President.
go ahead, Mr. Castillo.
Mr. Dempsey, I guess for me, the only, problem that I would have if we, put it into open comment, right? They submit, and then, would be the amount of comments that we get. And, obviously, we're going to tell, our agenda says 30 minutes. And if we don't read everything that came in, is somebody going to say, you didn't allow me my time? Even though it's, we say, okay, we're starting right now at 6:30, and then at 7 say, okay, here's the 30 minutes. I mean, there might be somebody that might say, you still cut me off, or, I was the first one in line and you didn't read mine at all. I mean, that's where I would have issue into making it into public comment. Again, I definitely don't want somebody rambling, and comments, even written comments, we're gonna get God knows, what kind of language we're gonna get. But I mean, it is what it is. Personally, I think written would be safer, and then, we can come and address it after the fact. Just let them do what they're gonna do, and, filter through that, I don't wanna say at our leisure, but, after the fact. I mean, because at the end of the day, whatever comment they're putting, it may or may not be on the agenda, so we may or may not be able to address it anyway.
Mr. Castillo, those are excellent points, and I appreciate the feedback. And for everyone to just sort of kind of wrap your mind around, what we're talking about is our video on YouTube, we can allow comments. We have no control over it, but quite frankly, whatever they put, they put. Now, we would not be monitoring that during the meeting in any way, shape, or form. It would all be after the fact, because we cannot get into that space. And how would we functionally do that in a meeting? There's no way to do that. So that's sort of what we, with one attorney, kind of thought through. That might be a way to open this door and not open it too wide. But that doesn't protect us from really bad comments there either.
So I want to say, I agree with Mr. Castillo. I would rather stick to the typed comments versus the verbal comments. I would rather stay with the written comments versus verbal, because then I'm thinking, because you said it would be like in the format of open forum, and then it'd be like, well, at least in open forum, we can control how many within that 30-minute slot, and then it'd be like, how do you time them, and when does it stop?
Madam President, so, great point. Right now, I think our policy states 5 minutes per participant for a maximum of 30 minutes, right? And then you have the authority to waive that. As I envision this, and Mr. Snowdy and I've kind of had a couple conversations about this, I think what we'll have to do is if we were able to submit it in writing, we're going to have to explain to them, in general, it has to be, let's just, and I don't know how many words, less than 300 words, or whatever we can make it fit into that 5-minute period, if you will. We have talked about trying to use some form of AI to read it so that we don't influence, inflections in voice and things of that nature. You want to be careful with that, because somebody I didn't mean it that way. The way Mr. Dempsey read that's not what I meant. And so we want to kind of stay away from anything that might be perceived as influence, if you will. And I think we can pull that piece off pretty well. I would suggest the reality is we're going to have some trial and error here. We're just going to have to see. I appreciate Mr. Lita sharing what the city of Sunland Park's going through. I would say let's wade into this pool cautiously. Let's not jump into that deep end, because it can be a lot to manage, and we don't want to get ourselves too far in there. Knowing I anticipate changes, to be honest with you. In a 60-day session, I anticipate some language changes. And this was passed by 2 very influential senators.
Any further comments?
Madam
Mr.
President,
Castillo?
one more. As far as, again, making it verbal, if we're still, because I see that on the agenda, we got broadband, right? We're still struggling with broadband here and there, depending. And again, I think if we make it verbal, should somebody get cut off, and it might be their phone, wherever they're calling from, I don't want to get accused of we're the ones that shut them down. And if I'm pretty sure anybody, they're on their high horse, and boom, it goes down. First thing they're going to say is that you cut me off. Even, again, we can't prove that it was their phone, but, we set ourselves up if we make it verbal. And again, there's still changes to come, but again, that's my opinion.
Any further comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dempsey. Moving on to item 11C, statewide broadband network for K through 12. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Mr. Snowdy is going to help us with this item.
Madam President, school board members, Superintendent Dempsey. Let's hope this works. It does. So the state education network is designed to bring every district in the state reliable internet. Now, that may seem unusual, but during the pandemic, and I'm going to give you a brief history, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was discovered that this is the internet layout for the state. On the left map there, that's areas that receive at least 25 megabytes download, which is reasonable for a family. The orange areas is 100 megabytes download, which is pretty good. But there were actually school districts out there at the beginning of the pandemic that were still on dial-up. The whole school district was on dial-up, like DSL. So the state came up with a really bold plan to build out a state network that supported all school districts in the state. Now, just to give you an idea, back in 2022, These were I pulled these out of a newspaper article back in 2022. Farmington, the average download speed per student in the district was 1/10 of 1 megabyte. For Roswell, it was 1/4 of a megabyte. Now, because of the investments Gadsden has made in our network and because of our partnerships with our ISPs, our students were getting 4.5 megabytes. Well, 4.8. Now, the actual federal recommendation is at least 1 megabyte per student. So Gadsden, because of its investments, we far exceed that. But the rest of the state was in really poor condition. So the bold plan was to build out this huge network that supports all the districts in the state. Now, we're in a really good position. We actually have one of the highest bandwidths and the lowest cost for internets for Gadsden. But we signed on, and along with a lot of the other larger school districts, to help bring the negotiating power to keep that cost down and to be able to build up this state network. So while it's not directly benefiting us on actually our speed, it's benefiting the state in general to bring that internet, high-speed internet, to every district. And then the areas that we're actually going to see the benefit is it does bring some increased resiliency. Now, just to give you an idea, right now, you can kind of see us right down there by El Paso. Our network comes directly from Conterra, and that's it. It's a one-line pipe to Conterra. When we join this network, it's actually going to have other pipelines. So, for example, once or twice a year, our Conterra network goes down in El Paso and everybody loses internet for the hour or two it takes to come back up. If this network gets built out, you'll be able to kind of get internet from Denver, Phoenix, Salt Lake City. Who's the other one? I can't read that one. But it'll actually be able to get internet from other routes. So if Conterra in El Paso goes down, we've got alternatives coming into the district. So it brings a little bit more resiliency to us. But everybody in that network also gets those same benefits. And then some of the other benefits, whoops, too fast. By creating these regional command centers, and the one that we'll be tied into is through NMSU, they'll be able to actually run some advanced firewalls that can prevent what's called denial of service attacks, where they try and overwhelm a network. There's some cybersecurity things that they can apply at those regional centers that we don't have to pay for. Being part of the network, they're going to take care of that. The other thing is all of these networks are paid through federal E-rate funding. All of our internet currently is being paid for, most of our internet is being paid for E-rate funding. The state will take over submitting those bids. Every year, Gadsden has to submit bids for internet service. That takes that responsibility off of my team, and then the state takes over submitting those E-rate proposals, and then eventually we would be paying the state the same thing we pay individually right now, but it takes the administrative cost off of us and puts that on the state to negotiate those contracts. And then it helps reduce some of our administrative burdens. But the main reason Gadsden originally signed on, and many of the other big districts, is to bring bargaining power to the state. So when they put these RFPs to build this network, there's a lot of bargaining power there. So Gadsden and several other large districts participate. But we were one of the early ones that was asked to join so we could get some clout on that negotiating power. But all of this really just comes down to it's internet for districts. While we're in great shape, there are still districts out there that struggle. I mean, it's the little towns out in the middle of nowhere. I stand for questions.
Questions, comments, concerns for Mr. Snoddy? Ms. Rodriguez.
Madam President, I appreciate this presentation because it really creates that awareness of what the benefit is, right? That we were already doing great, and so now with that opportunity to be able to have those other locations that you mentioned, I think that, especially because there was information out there, and I think that a lot of the confusion was like, well, we already have internet here, but understanding that there's more to it, and I mean, just even hearing about the E-rate, I think that's going to be of great benefit already, just the fact that you don't have to deal with all of that, yet we are still liable and responsible for paying. So thank you. I think that this clarifies a whole lot, and it makes more sense seeing what it looks like.
And some people were confusing this with Internet for Families, because I talked to a journalist in the Albuquerque Journal 2 weeks ago, and she was confusing the broadband for families with the State Education Network. But State Education Network is Internet for Schools, and Gadsden's other project is Internet for Families. So there was a little confusion there.
Sir, is this like a funded project, or it's something that's getting worked on or looked at?
So the state did get full funding 4 years ago. It's literally taken them 4 years to build the plan, and they're just now to the implementation stage. Gadsden is one of the first districts that's getting wired into this. I think we're one of the first 10 that are actually being wired in. It's not going to change a thing for our network. We're going to get the same speeds we always do. We just get a little bit more redundancy. Yeah, a little bit more resiliency, and then the cybersecurity side, they add that component. So, but it's taken 4 years. It has not been fast, but they're fully funded.
Any further comments, questions? Thank you, Mr. Snowdy, for your presentation. Thank you. Okay, moving on to discussion item 10D, policy IKF, graduation requirements, Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Mr. Wogermuth is going to present this item.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I'm coming on behalf of Academic Services tonight to give you a kickoff regarding some substantial changes and decision-making that's going to need to be done regarding our graduation requirements. Mr. Dempsey, did you have a chance to hand these out? I think the first thing to understand is, why are we going to need to be making this change? So, as you may have been following the legislature in the last session, House Bill 171 was passed that made significant changes to graduation requirements here in New Mexico. This will impact multiple state statutes and administrative code. We'll need to make sure that our policy, our existing policy that you see in front of you, is in alignment with these new requirements that are in state statute. This will not go in effect, these new requirements that we will all work together to decide on, will not go in effect until the 25-26 school year. So for the ninth graders that end the inter-school next year is when they'll go into effect. So we have this time to plan. Now, I've given you a copy just for your reference. This is a kickoff point of the current graduation requirements. I'm not going to go over them now, but what I just did want you to understand as you were kind of glancing at this is that there's probably going to be changes throughout this entire policy. We'll probably get a shell of a policy advisory from NMSBA, but there's a lot of district-specific work that will need to go into this. So just understand, we'll eventually get a policy advisory, but there's really a lot of customization that needs to occur with this. So, and if you look, like Mr. Dempsey said earlier, with some of the other policies, there's a lot of cross-references to other policies. So if you look at the very last page on the bottom, you're going to see these are cross-referenced everywhere. So there's going to be an amount of work that needs to occur here. I'm going to take you just through a quick history of graduation requirements, so you'll have context for how we ended up here. So, last November when we started last school year, these were the requirements in the blue circles, the first two, to get a diploma of excellence in New Mexico. You had to meet the coursework requirements. Then you had to meet competency requirements. If you recall, we had some conversations last year about the competency requirements, that you have to take the state tests in the 5 core subjects, and then you have to demonstrate competency by passing what we decided here, those district final exams. So we kind of got all that settled in November, and we presented to you, and you all passed it, so we could be prepared for the kids that were graduating in May. Remember, the PED did not give that to us until very late in November. One thing that we don't mention often that's always been part of graduation plans is what we put in the purple box here is a next step plan. Starting in 8th grade, every year you're supposed to annually up the students, work with teachers and advisors to annually update their next step plan, and upon graduation, they have a final next step plan indicating what they're doing next. That's been historically a common thing in graduation requirements. So again, this is where we were at in November. Then in March that year, not long after we passed the requirements for the DFEs, a memo came out from the PED saying, effective the start of May of 2024, there's no longer a competency requirement, okay? They said you don't have to pass the state tests. The new law, House Bill 171 that was passed, negated that. And via a memo, the Secretary of Ed said, there's no competency requirement, but you do have to attempt your federally required state tests, okay? And so that's where we ended up with the kids that just graduated. So we started off with, actually the pandemic, a lot of what's going on, got back to something normal-ish in November, changed it in April with this bill passage, and now we have to really go forward. So this is kind of what it's going to look like. Pretty simple here. We have coursework requirements. If they meet those coursework requirements, it's going to equal a diploma. Things that are still in place, we still have our green box there. There's still a PED memo published that says you have to attempt your state tests. You don't have to pass them, you have to attempt them. That memo is actually posted on the PED website all the way up through the class of 2029. I don't know what's going to happen with that memo and how it's going to end up as part of this. So that green box could eventually slip off of this because it's right now not in rule, just in memo form. Again, next step plans, in the bottom left pink box, still going to be required. One new thing that was part of the state statute is every district's going to have to develop a graduate profile. And that graduate profile is going to indicate the academic expectations aligned to the credits and what we want kids to do actually all the way through their progression of education, not just in high school. Okay, so as we are considering the work that we're going to have to do to eventually get this policy where it needs to be by the start of next school year, there's some pretty significant work here that Academic Services is going to be partnering with you all as a board to complete. An important thing to know now, and as we delve further into this work, right now, as we're talking right now, who knows after this legislative session, but right now, everything of importance is all described in the same state statute. So if you wanted to get a heads up on where we're going to be going for your, some pre-education, if you, go to New Mexico OneSource, look up that New Mexico statute, that will kind of give you a glimpse of all the graduation requirements. Now, I'm going to talk to you briefly about coursework requirements just to give you context of where we're at, what was in the bill, and then I'll show you a timeline, and then I'll have some time to get some guidance from you all. So these are the current graduation requirements for our kids that are currently in high school. They total 26 credits. These have been generally, save for maybe the half credit of health, these have been the requirements for the past about 15 or 16 years. So understand the decisions we make as a team are gonna impact for a long time going forward. They don't change them terribly often like they have now. So these are our current requirements. In total, Gadsden is requiring 26 credits. The state minimum in the current requirements is 24. You can see on the left-hand side here some pretty standard items here, 4 credits in English, 4 credits in math. This is what you'll see in the policy here if you read along. Social studies, telling you what type of social studies, 1 class of PE, half a credit of health, 2 foreign language, then a career cluster workplace readiness course, or a 3rd foreign language, and 7 additional credits. Right now, one of these courses, one of these 26 credits the kids take must be either an AP, honors, distance learning, or dual credit. If you're wondering, okay, Nick, you said the state requires 24, we require 26. What's the general difference? The general difference is in yellow there. The general difference is the number of foreign language credits that we require. The state basically says in their requirements, you have the current ones, that you have to take a workplace readiness class or one foreign language class. Okay, when this was put into policy several years ago, we decided as a team 26 credits, and we kind of got a little bit of extra foreign language in there in Gadsden. So that's where we're at now. This is where we're going. Okay, when you look at the total numbers of credits, they remain relatively the same. So again, 4 credits of English, 4 credits of math, 3 of science. That's the number of credits, same as previous. I think the important thing to note on there, and it was we'll delve into as we go forward with this, is that it's a 3-credit sequence plus a 4th one of your choice. So what they're adding in there to each of these is an element of choice for kids. Why is that? Because they want to make sure that when you're taking a sequence of math, you're taking a sequence of English or science, and to an extent social studies, we want to offer the kid a choice with at least one of those credits to tie that back into what their post-secondary plans might be. So the theme in here, and you saw it in the news, is really and in legislative action, focusing on CTE, workplace readiness, pathways, relevance in what you're doing. So they're really looking here to add in some choice tied to a pathway or an area of interest, and that's their intention. History, they went up to 4 full credits. The New Mexico history is no longer a standalone credit. It is moved, embedded into U.S. history, and then, of course, plus 1 more of their choice. PE remains the same. Health requirement is still half a credit. However, they're allowing that to be either at high school or at middle school. That's a decision we'll eventually have to make where that half credit of health is best placed. And then 5.5 elective credits. What I've highlighted here, and this is really unique, and I think it's an outstanding decision by the legislature, must include a 2-sequence pathway of the student's choice in one of the following areas. So here you see the pathway, the choice, the preparation. And you can see they said 2 courses in a CTE program, or 2 courses in a language other than English, or military careers, or health. That's not well defined what that means yet, or fine arts, or service and work-based learning. So again, what they're trying to do here is focus students' elective choices towards pathways of interest instead of, well, you got 7 elective credits, knock yourself out, do what you like to do. What Gadsden has done very well the last several years is we've really shifted our electives that we offer, the just district expectation, into pathways already. So our kids are already used to being in this pathway mode, so there won't be that much of a change. Typically, we don't encourage our students when they're in our high schools to just be taking 7 random electives. We want those to connect. We know students that are completers in CTE have a higher graduation rate. Another significant change here, and this is a total of 24 credits at the state level, minimum 24, 2 local credits decided by, at the end of the day, approved by you as the school board. Again, those 2 local credits, if you think about that graduation profile, you'll see a lot of language when you read the statute about what credits are important to the community of Gadsden, and make sure that whatever we choose to select as a team meets the needs of our district. Okay, that equals 24. An important thing to note that's not on here, on the ones we're currently under, one of these had to be AP dual credit online or distance learning. That is not a requirement here. It says in the statute we should offer, right? We should offer those opportunities, but not require it, okay? So again, as you're thinking, what are the differences? The differences lie in choice, pathway, CTE, and local credits that are crafted to the needs of our community. Again, remember the minimum's 24 credits. Obviously, as a school board and as a team, we can decide to have more credits. We just cannot have less than 24. I'm going to get to the end here, but I want to point this out from the statute because from the campus leadership and an administrative perspective and a timeline perspective, I almost fell over a little bit on this. It says the department, the PED, because they have to promulgate or create rules that define what those things on the previous slide mean, right? What do you mean by choice? Department approved. They have to come up with, as it says here, by no later than December 31st, the rules shall include revisions to expand course offerings so that students have access to a range of rigorous academic options and CTE courses, and establish the guidance for what the graduate profile should look like. I tell you this because we're going to have to plan, and hopefully the PED does this earlier, because typically when we plan for the 25-26 school year, when it comes to course offerings, requirements, student registration, we start planning that in October to kick off student registration in January, to have parents do the final sign-off in February so we can make our schedules. This is basically saying we may not have exact clarity by December 31st. So again, as a secondary person, well, I'm a little anxious about that. These are the actions that we've taken to date in a proposed timeline. We were tracking the legislation back when the session was occurring. In March, Academic Services started having conversations about, okay, here's what the law looks like. What are we thinking? So we've been having some internal discussions about that. In April of 24, we had talked with student leadership when these were proposals to let them know what was coming up, our district student leadership. In April 24, we took back to them kind of a similar presentation that you're seeing here, and we asked those district leadership students, here are the questions you have to decide, this or that. They gave us some very good input on what they really feel the priorities for those 2 credits should be, how many credits we should be offering. They really gave us some good input on that. So that was a step that we took with that group before the end of the year. Some of them were not affected by it, and some of them will be directly affected by it. You are receiving today your initial, here it comes, presentation. So we have this August through October window that we're going to talk about here in a second, that academic services, the school board, however we choose to do this, we're really going to need to start, absent the rule being published, trying to set ourselves down a pathway of what we want things to look like. We could watch those rules as they're posted. They'll post those rules ahead of time. They have to have comment. We'll watch those ahead of time to see if we just can't quite get things prepared so we're ready to act quickly so our campuses can move forward with proper registration and planning. Again, I've placed here this deadline in red. We talked a little bit about January 23rd at the latest board meeting. That is our proposed latest day for action, because the February 13th through 14th is when the parents are supposed to do the final sign-off. And those of you that have kids in secondary school, I can see you nodding. You're going, I know the process. Yeah, we got to get that done, because courses lead to schedules, lead to staffing needs, lead to money, lead to a whole bit of things. And of course, I did put there in purple our little timeline dilemma. Okay, so the last 2 things here that we need your feedback on is what you're thinking about for a work plan on this, because it's going to require your all's input and, again, final approval, and any clarifications or input you have to us as academic services as we go forward in trying to plan this. So I'd like to get a little bit of feedback on both of those topics from you. So I think one, on the work plan, we need some feedback on what's the preferred format. Is it work sessions, presentations, discussions in the board meeting, possibly a committee of a couple of board members that can meet as a committee with the academic services team to work through things, and we can report back to you. I can't say right now how often we're going to need to meet, but there is going to be some significant work here. So while you're giving us feedback on the work plan, if there's any clarifying questions you have about what I've shared, I'll be happy to take them now. So clarifying questions and feedback on a work plan.
Questions for Mr. Wolgemuth?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Castillo.
Madam President, I mean, my only comment is that we still don't back down from our 26, right? I mean, that's what I would say. And then I'm pretty sure you had conversation with the students, but again, I would say that we don't back down from our 26 requirement.
What are the two the credits that Gadsden is offering right now? I read that. What are the two credits that they are the local required classes? What are we offering?
Madam President, Board Member Lita, so this is not the current requirement. If you look here, you see how that's 2 and the one above it is 5.5, so 5.5 credits plus 2. If you go back here, you kind of see how it's 7 credits on the bottom. So we don't have any specifically designated ones that kids have to take, but the new requirement is saying you need to define 2 at minimum 2, right, for your community. We've sort of done that here because in the current ones, we've defined additional courses in foreign language. But this is really talking about, I mean, up there it says the kid has to take two languages other than English. If the board wanted to, they could say, hey, every kid here has to take 3 foreign language classes, and that third one would be one of the 2 local required ones. So that's a decision that we're going to have to make.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What about what are you all envisioning for a work plan setup to collaborate with you all on this?
What do you think, board presentation, in a board meeting or a workshop? I was thinking, more towards a workshop.
Workshops? Okay. Workshops. What other, again, we're going to launch this. We'll get a workshop made, and we know we need to prepare for that, and we'll be looking for stuff. So we're going to launch some of this work as academic services so we can be prepared for a workshop, and it may require an additional discussion item or another workshop. This could be it's going to, I think, be a little bit of an ongoing thing. As we move forward, Mr. Board Member Castillo mentioned, hey, we know the 26 credits, that's an important thing to keep in mind. What are some other things that you want us to keep in mind as we're going forward in designing this or getting feedback on this or planning this?
So I guess I do have comments and questions. Since we are now required to develop a graduate profile, that hasn't started yet, correct?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, no, that hasn't started yet because the rules about what that profile exactly should be structured aren't technically due to the end of December by the PED. However, they want us to develop the profile and make sure our courses we select, right, that we're deciding on, meet that profile. So there's a timeline situation here that we're going to have to do our best to look at other states, what are the profiles here, how they're structured, and really come up with some frameworks that we think will meet the PED rule.
Who do you envision being part of the team to create the graduate profile, and are you considering students too, student voice?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, absolutely. When we had a conversation at a secondary level about student voice in general, so I really do think we have different elements of student voice that we can bring in, not only from district leadership. I think a little bit of the challenges before we bring the student voice in, we need to have time to sort of narrow our framework a little bit. So that way, the kids and the families that are giving input, they can give input in a more structured framework than really broad. So I think that, and we have some feedback from the district leadership kids that on like a kickoff workshop we could share with you as a start, and then I think that will inform us how to go forward in getting that input on the profile, which again will relate to the credits.
And you answered actually one of my other questions is I heard family, so that means you once you refine, you'll also be having parent voice and community stakeholder input, because these will be future citizens in these communities.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I think there's a couple of ways to do that. I think a couple of ways as we move through the process to gather that. And again, I think a workshop's a great idea because a workshop is open to the public, and I think we should really encourage students and parents to come, listen and engage, listen to that workshop and what's going on. That way they can more effectively, they have the ability to more effectively engage later. If we videotape it, then they'll have an opportunity to view that.
Okay. And then I guess my last comment is in the slideshow, we're preparing for, wait a minute, for entering freshmen, which are currently 8th graders. So one of where it says must include a 2-sequence pathway. So I see military, careers, health. And we both know that in Chaparral High School, that's not even possible right now because we don't have an ROTC for our kiddos. So, I mean, that'll be taken into consideration as far as what courses will be offered in the future so that we meet those bullet points.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, great point, and we continue to work on that particular need. So just note those 6 bullets that are underneath must include a 2-course sequence in. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to offer all of those at each campus. It's just really, I think what the legislature has tried to do is, hey, we want to crack this open as wide as possible for sequences for kids if your school or district offers that. So when you're thinking about our district that has, some more flexibility in courses versus our smaller rural districts, think this sort of open bullet list here. No matter if you're a rural district or a large urban district, kids have an opportunity to fit in there somewhere.
Okay. And this is just a comment. I'm quite surprised that we don't see agriculture because, I mean, where would that fit under?
Madam
And
President.
such programs like FFA and stuff like that.
Sorry. Madam President, any of those things that you're thinking of in regards to agriculture, that will fall into a CTE program.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Okay. I'm done with my questions, but thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. And Arlene, do you have any questions? Ms. Murillo?
No, you guys got everything. Thank you so much, Mr. Wolgamith. You know what? And I don't know if Ms. Flores mentioned this one too, but in the workshop, can we also have maybe CTE to come and be part of a conversation? That's one thing that we're seeing a lot. CTE, the kids graduating and some of them just looking for those pathways.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, Board Member Murillo. Yes, again, when we're talking about academic services, that will include our members of our CTE department here. They have connections with folks, at least what are called local labor need reports that our CTE courses have to be based on. So even if we can have industry members here, we had a meeting where we got industry members' input on the need for CTE courses, so we can bring that information and include that in our decision-making process.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Can you repeat that again?
I said awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Wolgamith. Good evening. Okay, moving on to our last discussion item for this evening is our item 11A, monthly budget report for the month ending May 31st, 2024. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Martinez will present this item.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. I bring to you for discussion the budget report, the monthly budget report for ending May 31st, 2024. Operational fund revenues were $148.2 million. Expenditures were $139.4 million. Our cash balance after temporary loans was $68,698,653. As of May 31st, the PED and other grant agencies owed the district approximately $6.9 million for grant fund expenditures, nothing for capital projects, and $2.1 million for student nutrition. Total revenues for all funds were $285,435,000. $336,000. Total expenditures were $239,634,706. Direct instruction plus encumbrances was $101.2 million, or approximately 62.14% of total fund expenditures. All banks were in compliance with pledge collateral requirements. I stand for questions, comments.
Questions, comments, concerns? Okay, I don't believe we have any. Thank you for your presentation. Good evening. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda. I'm not going to read those to you, but that's our upcoming board meetings and events. Please plan accordingly, board members, so that we can be able to attend these meetings. Any questions, comments regarding this? Okay, and then moving on then, I make a motion that we enter into closed session, limited personnel matters pursuant to 10-15-1H2 of the Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978, as amended for superintendents and associate superintendents report on employee on administrative leave with pay, employee grievances, and employee issues. Ms. Delgado, can you please take roll call to enter into closed session?
Mr. Castillo?
Aye.
Ms. Flores?
Aye.
Mr. Lira?
Aye.
Ms. Murillo?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. We are now in closed session. Thank you, folks, for joining us this evening. Have a good evening.